Hello, my name is Annika McGinnis, and I'm the co-founder of InfoNile. InfoNile is a geojournalism platform driving action on water, biodiversity, and environmental issues in the Nile Basin. We are a cross-border group of more than 780 geojournalists with a mission to uncover critical stories on water issues in the Nile River Basin through database multimedia storytelling. We work in the 11 countries in Eastern and Northern Africa that share the Nile River, and we build the capacity of journalists and connect them to scientists to report original cross-border investigations published in multiple languages and media outlets. We are an initiative of Water Journalists Africa, which is the largest network of journalists who are reporting on water issues on the African continent. This is our team. We have a team that is based in Uganda, and we have country coordinators and translators in different countries, including in Kenya, Sudan, Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Rwanda. And these country coordinators translate our stories into local languages, including Amharic, Swahili, Arabic, and French. So why do we focus on the Nile River? The Nile River is the world's longest river, which stretches through 11 countries in Africa, supporting millions of people. However, there's an increasing environmental crisis in the Nile Basin. It's one of the world's most biodiverse regions, but it's highly threatened by issues including climate change, water scarcity, biodiversity threats, population growth, and water pollution, which are all worsening water scarcity and threatening habitats and species that are critical to the basin's populations and livelihoods. However, on the side of the journalists, there are insufficient resources and training for high-quality stories that can drive action on these issues. There's also a disconnect between journalists and scientists. There is a gap between the data that's published by scientists and researchers and its translation to the general public knowledge through the media. So how do we work? We first identify a theme of common and cross-border importance. These are some of the themes that we've worked on in the past, including biodiversity and transboundary lakes, plastic pollution of Lake Victoria, and water scarcity during COVID-19. Once we have a theme, we call for pitches from journalists in our network to report stories on these issues, and we provide funding for in-depth field reporting that allows journalists to go to the field and do really in-depth and investigative stories. Journalists publish their stories on radio, TV, print, and online platforms, and we support journalists to work in collaborations, not funding them as individuals, but as small groups. Journalists working in inter-country collaborations, such as a national journalist, a TV or radio, journalists working with a local community-based reporter, such as someone working for a community radio station, or cross-border collaborations where journalists work across countries to produce this, to report on the same topic. And this allows us to reach different audiences in different languages with the same information. So for all of our journalists, we provide mentorship and training, especially in data and science journalism, as well as environmental and science reporting. And then the journalists publish their stories in their local media houses, often in local languages, along with the data visualizations that we support them to produce. So through this, we're also encouraging different media houses to incorporate a culture of producing and publishing data visualizations in their media houses. Then we translate the stories to regional languages, Arabic, Amharic, Swahili, and French, and publish them on InfoNile and promote them through our various platforms. And finally, we create cross-border multimedia projects which combine all the local stories on a similar theme with additional cross-border data analysis and visualizations. So here we incorporate lots of what we call geojournalism visualizations, such as drone videos and photography, satellite imagery, and interactive maps. And we also create various actionable interactive maps that are published with the stories. So this is about our training programs. We run a 3 to 6 month online training program focusing on data journalism skills, but this also includes in-person mentorship from data experts in every country who are able to meet with our trainees in person to really allow them to practice the skills that they're gaining through the online sessions. And we run this in partnership with Code for Africa. We also conduct various in-person training workshops. These are week-long workshops which bring together journalists from different countries reporting on the same theme, such as journalists from the Lake Victoria Basin countries reporting about threats to Lake Victoria, or journalists from the whole Nile Basin, like you can see here, reporting on issues around the whole Nile Basin. So our training programs incorporate practical training in data journalism, as well as field visits and science journalism. This is an example of one of our recent cross-border stories, which was looking at shrinking lakes in East Africa and the various threats to lakes and freshwater resources in Eastern Africa. And these are photos from one of our recent training programs that brought together journalists from 10 countries. You can see them here at a field visit to the Nile River, and here as well practicing data journalism practically in the classroom. So these are some of the themes that we have looked at in the past 5 years. So they're quite wide-ranging around water and environmental topics, including access to clean water, threats to biodiversity, wildlife trafficking, land and water grabs, plastic pollution, and a photojournalism project called Everyday Nile, youth-driven climate change solutions in urban and rural areas, agriculture, water management, and resilience during COVID-19, and solar energy. So we have enabled the production of more than 310 data-based multimedia stories on these issues that have been published on more than 106 media houses in 12 languages in 14 countries. And you can see a good breakdown between online platforms, radio stations, newspapers, and TV stations. This is an example of what our data visualizations look like. We have produced hundreds of them over the years, and we use various online softwares like Flourish, like Data Wrapper, to produce these visualizations, the skills which we also give to the journalists. This is an example of one of our interactive maps, which is looking at water scarcity that has been compounded in times of COVID-19 and climate change. And then this is another one, which we produced with Oxpeckers, which is an environmental journalism organization based in South Africa, looking at wildlife crime and trafficking in Eastern Africa. So most recently, we have launched a WhatsApp chatbot service, which is the first of its kind in the region, offering knowledge and content on water and environment in the Nile Basin. And through this chatbot, you can receive our stories, our data, and our mobile magazines, which are magazines designed specifically for mobile to translate our in-depth stories into youth and mobile-friendly content. So that is our number where you can access all of our services, our stories, our information, and our resources just on your phone. So how do we do it? We are really intent on combining humanistic storytelling with data. We know that it's human stories that drive people to act, but we need the data and the information to really bring out the contextual issues and drive the action that we want to see in the Nile Basin. So we combine things like very compelling humanistic photography with interactive maps, for example. How do we do it? We do a lot of cross-border and collaborative stories. For example, a story that was looking at a hydropower project, which is affecting 4 countries. We worked with journalists from each of those countries to report on this project, to share information, and then to publish their stories in the 4 different countries on various media outlets. How else do we do it? We have just launched a new platform called NileWell. It's the first platform in the basin to connect water and environmental scientists with journalists, with the intention to help them collaborate, produce, and share knowledge on water, biodiversity, and the environment. So through this platform, anyone can create an account and be able to connect with members of the other group. And this is one of the ways that we are trying to bridge the gap between journalists and scientists, and also promote accessibility of resources, like accessibility of scientific research, and more resources to help journalists know how to understand and communicate this science. So through the NileWell program, we are organizing various monthly science and media workshops and cafes to bring together the scientists with the journalists to share and collaborate. How else do we do it? We have been bringing the stories back to communities. For example, some of our photo stories looking at climate change in Uganda and Kenya, we were able to bring those back to the communities of origin and allow them to discuss the issue in their local language and come up with solutions to the climate change issues that they were seeing in the photos. So these are some of our story impacts. We always track the impacts of the stories, both on the local communities, on the governments, and also on the journalists themselves. So you can see there has been policy change, private sector action, community or civil society action, and government investigations and institutional action that have resulted from our stories. And these are some of the examples which you can see, including installation of clean toilets in Uganda, piped water in Tanzania, jobs in South Sudan, activism around oil pollution in Sudan, a budget for water in Ethiopia, and many others. And on the personal level, we try to inspire our journalists to do more data journalism, more environmental reporting, and continue to do these stories even after they work with us. And this is some of the ways that they have been inspired, including Jennifer, who has been training her team on how to do database stories. She recently got a promotion as a regional editor at the Uganda Broadcasting Corporation, as well as Jacob in Tanzania, who has now founded his own online startup focusing on environmental stories. So we encourage you to come in to support our work. We are looking for support on our core projects, such as supporting the journalists to do stories, the Nile Well platform, our chatbot, and doing more cross-border stories that can have impacts on water and environment in the Nile Basin. Thank you so much.